Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 500 likes on this one. Of course, only drop a like if you feel the video is genuinely deserving of it. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated, as I post content just like this all of the time. I'm also trying to reach 125,000 subscribers. And we're getting pretty close. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. My friends and I once found what seemed to be an abandoned mental asylum. You know, the type you see in scary movies. Big, scary entrance, once boarded up, now decaying with planks broken and nails sticking out. Located far out in the woods in the middle of nowhere. No one of us could understand why it was placed there. When was it built? We discussed it, but it was all speculations. It couldn't have been easy to build. There were no roads leading to the building, at least none that were apparent. Faint tracks in the mud indicated what could have been roads a long time ago, but what was left was far from what you could drive a car on, let alone a truck. We had heard rumors about the building, and that it once was used for treating the insane. Apparently it had originally been built as a sanatorium, hence the location, but we all thought it was a bit far-fetched. It was just rumors. However, we went to find out if it was true or not. No one remembers who told us about it, but we had all heard them. Who heard them first? Who knows? Someone pitched the idea of exploring the woods and searching for it, and everyone wanted to go. Simple as that. Getting there wasn't easy. The forest was filled with thickets and marshes that repeatedly forced us off any direct path. After fighting through the weeds for what seemed to be hours, a chimney rose up from some brushwood. We were finally there. The group consisted of me, John, Adam, Marshall, and James. Adam was the newcomer of the group, and the rest of us had been friends since freshman year of college. We regularly went out in the woods, visiting parks and such, so this type of exploration was out of the ordinary. We walked up to the front side of the building. The size of it felt wrong. All the pictures we had seen online of different asylums showed large buildings, tall, with several rows of windows and different wings. This one seemed small in comparison. From the entrance we could see 2 wings, one on each side, roughly 100 feet long. On both wings were 2 rows of small windows, presumably cells, and 1 row of large windows on the first floor. Most of the first floor were boarded up, while the ones on the second and third floors had cracked or were missing completely. A brief look at the entrance told us enough, that it was nothing but a death trap. The rotting boards covering the door hung loosely. James said he thought we could remove them, but Adam stopped him. He said he would get crushed if he tried, and if that happened, how would we call an ambulance? Not to mention the diseases he could contract. We split up into 2 groups. James, Marshall, and I went counterclockwise around the building, while Adam and John went clockwise. On the short side of the wing, we saw a large sheet of plywood leaning against the wall. It was fresh and still light brown, as opposed to the dark, corroded browns of the surrounding wood. Apparently, we weren't the only ones who had ventured here. But how would anyone get it out here? And why? Behind the plywood sheet was a door. A new door. No cracks, no moss, fresh hinges, and a shiny padlock in stainless steel. I felt a chill through my spine. We weren't supposed to be here. Someone had been here, probably recently. Why? Why would anyone make the effort to drag materials out here? Were they squatters? Junkies? If we met someone, which would be better? I shivered and looked at James and Marshall. Both were grinning and discussing what could be behind the door. Not a single word of caution, only excitement. James tried banging on the door. Did he expect someone to open? The thought of someone else here made me uneasy. Guys, I don't think we should be here. I want to leave. This place creeps me out. Before anyone could respond, we heard Adam from the other side. Hey, we found an entrance. James and Marshall rushed away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Very wrong. I felt watched from different directions. While looking at the surrounding vegetation, I felt someone watching me from within the building. When I turned around to check the windows, I saw nothing. But then the same feeling came once more, but now from the forest, as if it had eyes. A twig cracked, and I rushed to my friends. Adam was holding another fresh sheet of plywood, hiding yet another door. Same type of door, new hinges, and a matching padlock. The padlock hung on the door, shackle open. Apparently it wasn't locked, John said. We found one as well, but we didn't touch it, said Marshall. We all looked at each other. My friends were grinning with anticipation, while I almost trembled with fear. Y'all ready? Adam grabbed the door while I closed my eyes. I wanted to leave so badly, but I knew that if I tried to find my way back, I would get lost. If I got lost, whatever was lurking in the woods would get me, like in every horror movie. I wasn't that stupid. Adam pulled the door, and it swung open without any struggle. It seemed too new to be here. It shouldn't be here. It was totally wrong. New things on something that was supposed to be abandoned felt wrong. Abandoned things should be rusted and rotten, not fresh wood and shiny steel. I spoke before anyone could enter the doorway. Do none of you think it's weird to find a perfect door, almost new, in a place like this? It's an abandoned building. It shouldn't look like this. So what? If we meet anything, we're a group. Besides, I brought protection, John said while showing his gun. Then it's nothing to worry about, Adam said. Let's go. I'm dying to see what's inside. He entered the building, followed by John. James and Marshall stayed with me. Noticing that we weren't moving, John mimicked a gun. They shrugged and followed John. How much safety would a gun provide? I shook my head in disbelief, but when the creeping sensation came back, I followed my group. The door we'd entered through had probably been an exit, as the inside showed a hallway. This must have been an administrative ward, as all the rooms looked like offices. Small signs ornamented each other, but time had made them unreadable. The closer we came to the main entrance, the worse the stench got. It smelled of mold and something rotten, like compost or roadkill. Past the main entrance, we saw a sign that read "Storage" and went to check it out. The stench worsened. Outside the door, it was unbearable, a thick, meaty smell. Marshall tried to yank the door, expressing his hope it would open the same way as our entrance. However, it didn't budge, so we continued to another room designated for storage. I covered my nose, but the stench seeped through everything. I gagged and almost vomited, but the others didn't seem bothered. Why? I want to leave. This feels too weird. Then do so. We'll continue exploring. I'll get lost if we don't go together. Marshall tried the other storage door and it opened. The room consisted of several shelves of glass vials and jars. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Why do you want to be here? I asked. Sure, it seemed fun at first, but this place gives me the creeps. How can you not think something is wrong? Because it's an abandoned building. It's old. It's going to smell and feel weird. What about the fresh plywood in the new door? Who would do such a thing? They all shrugged. What was I supposed to do? follow them, or try to find my way home. I felt that the best option was to stick with the group, even if I wanted to flee. In the back of the room, we found jars filled with some kind of liquid and organs. Kidneys, intestines, and even a brain suspended in some kind of liquid. I threw up while the rest of the group examined it thoroughly. While bending forward, I noticed something in the corner of the room. After wiping my mouth, I went over and saw that it was a white thermal box with red letters on it. Human organ for transplant. I felt like I was going to vomit. The box looked clean, like it was brand new. James went over to the box, but instead of picking it up, he opened the nearby locker, revealing even more thermal boxes. "We shouldn't be here," said James. I could hear his voice breaking up. Finally, someone felt the same as me. The rest of the group didn't seem too bothered by our macabre finding. "I just want to check upstairs really quick, then we'll leave this place, okay?" Adam bargained. All went back to the main entrance. Adam and Marshall went upstairs while the rest of us stayed behind. While waiting, we could hear the floor creaking as they walked away. After just a few minutes, we heard a commotion from upstairs. Suddenly, Adam yelled, "Help!" John drew his gun, and we rushed up the stairs and turned up to the right. It was a long and narrow hallway. Shattered glass covered the floor. A lot of the cell doors were either open or completely missing. Down the hallway, we saw Marshall on the floor, kicking and screaming as a figure was dragging him away. John rushed towards them, aiming his gun, but out of one of the open cell doors came a bat. It struck him right in the face, making an awful cracking sound. As he fell to the ground, blood spewed out of his mouth and teeth fell to the ground. Out of fear that it would happen again, neither me nor James dared to rush after. Who knew if more people were lurking? We walked as fast as we could, checking past each other for ambushes. Time-consuming, and as we checked each door, our friend was dragged further away. They were being dragged into a room, and by the time we got there, the door was locked. Through the small window, we could see the figures wrestling with Marshall. John sat in an adjacent chair. His face was mangled, and a stream of blood ran down his body. Still fighting for his life, Marshall didn't make it easy for the figures. I pulled the handle with all my force. I punched the window as hard as I could. Tears poured as I tried everything. John tried tackling the door, but it wouldn't give way. "What are we going to do?" James grabbed my shoulder and started to shake me. His eyes were red, and he was pale as a sheet. "Where did John's gun go?" I said, frantically scanning my eyes through the shaded gray corridor. We hurried back to where John had been ambushed, but the gun was nowhere to be found. In a desperate search for tools, we rushed down the stairs, back to the room labeled storage. In the same room as the thermal boxes, James found a crowbar. I grabbed a hammer and we rushed back. Halfway through the corridor, out of nowhere came a bat, hitting James right in the face. He fell to the ground. A large thud and one of his eyeballs popped. How many were there? The man came at me, swinging his bat in my face. I dodged and smashed his knee with my hammer. He screamed and fell to the ground, grabbing his knee and rolling around. One of his forearms had a black tattoo of a skull. I do not know why I noticed it, but something made me stare at it for a second. Out of the room where John and Marshall had been dragged came the two other ambushers, rushing towards me. I panicked, rushing down the stairs and through the hall. All the doors were closed, so I assumed that there wasn't anyone behind me. Not that I had the time to slow down and check. Once outside the building, Adam came running from the backside. We rushed as fast as we could through the forest, hopefully in the right direction. After a long time running, we came to a road. When we were sure that we had lost them, I grabbed my phone to call the police. Not knowing where we were, I tried my best to describe the location. It ended up being a vague explanation of where we were, and I told them what had happened. Adam told me that someone had pushed him into a cell and the door had locked. I looked at everything that moved, and the slightest cracking or any leaf caught by the wind was enough to scare me. Adam continued to explain, but I couldn't focus. Something about smashing the window and climbing down the wall. I wasn't that interested. I was mostly relieved that I wasn't alone. After a while, we saw the patrol car and waved at them. I had no idea where we came from, so Adam led the way. After walking what seemed to be an eternity, we came out of the forest to see a football field. Our football field. Somehow we had ended up in our city. "I don't understand," said Adam. "We walked the exact same way. How could we get lost?" I shook my head. I had no idea how this had happened. I had tried my best to remember the way, but apparently both of us were wrong. The police dismissed us. They must have thought we tried to trick them. First, they started to ridicule us, talking about the big and scary building right in the middle of nowhere that no one had heard of. Then their tone became harsher and said that we'd get arrested if we bothered them with this again. We weren't lying, but they didn't believe us. Marshall, James, and John were listed as missing, but they were never found again. I grieved the loss of my dear friends, blaming myself for not trying harder to stop them from entering. Adam and I didn't talk much after that. He found new friends to hang out with, but I was still mourning. Every night I had vivid dreams about what had happened. The dream started with a cloaked figure leading the way to the asylum. It carried a comically big set of keys with it, and would use it to open every door. Through each door, it would direct the group further, going upstairs and finally into an operation room. One after the other, my friends got knocked out by a taser. The figure closed the door in my face, leaving me outside, and started to restrain my friends. An open door showed thermal boxes. Lots and lots of thermal boxes. The figure started cutting in my friends, and I did nothing. I just stood there, watching my friends have their organs harvested. When the figure was done, and every organ harvested, the figure would stand before me, revealing its face, showing who it was. Me. It was I. Sometime later, I went to a bar to drown my sorrows when I saw Adam sitting in a booth, chatting with people I didn't know. Two of them were my age, probably students, and the third was much older and bigger. He sat there with crutches, leaning towards the booth. There was something about that man that made my stomach upset. He made eye contact with me, and while giving me a disturbing smile, he raised his glass. Then I saw it, the tattoo. Adam noticed me and gave an awkward smile, whispering something to the injured man. He tried to limp after me, but I turned around, walking as fast as I could without drawing attention to myself. My brain froze. I needed to get away. Fast. As I opened the door out, one of the unknown men started talking, addressing Adam, mentioning an abandoned building in the middle of nowhere. It was then I realized who had suggested that we go out there in the first place. I let the hot water beat down on my head. I had to get rid of this headache before the meeting. I couldn't figure out why I felt so lousy. My eyes were bloodshot. My mouth felt as dry as a desert wind, and tasted like summer roadkill. I needed to look sharp and with it for the meeting, even if it was online and I could technically be naked from the waist down. After a good 30 minutes, I got out of the shower feeling a little better. My mouth still tasted like crap after brushing my teeth, but no one would be able to smell my breath over the internet, and I knew I had eye drops somewhere to perk up my eyes. I went into the bedroom and got dressed. My bed was a mess. I didn't understand why. I thought I'd slept soundly. Didn't even remember getting up to go to the bathroom. I went to straighten it. When I picked up my pillow to fluff it, I noticed a white smudge on the blue fabric. I touched it. Greasy, like lotion or makeup. I stared at it, trying to figure out where it had come from, but nothing came to mind. I tossed the pillowcase into the hamper and headed into the kitchen to grab something quick to eat. There was an open, half-empty water bottle on the counter. I vaguely remembered drinking it. I poured out the rest and grabbed a fresh one from the fridge. I sat down at my desk with my water and a snack. Still had 10 minutes before the Zoom. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed one of the couch cushions was crooked. Weird. I hadn't even sat on it for days. The meeting started. 18 people. Everything was going fine until my boss, Patricia, asked me to send the group some photos of a housing development I'd found while traveling in Holland. I smiled. "You'll be impressed," I said. I opened the photo app on my phone and started scrolling to find the folder. But the last photo on my camera roll wasn't from Holland. The last photo stopped my heart cold. It looked like 4 grotesque figures sitting on a couch. I zoomed in. My pulse went haywire. My skin tightened, and goosebumps rose in waves. "Mandy?" Patricia's voice cut through. "Did you find the photos?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was locked on that image, trying to make sense of it. "Mandy," this time sharper. My stomach clenched. I felt like I might throw up. I looked at the laptop camera, muttered, "Excuse me," and slammed it shut. I stared at the photo, hands shaking. There were 4 people. 4 clowns. They were sitting on my couch, dressed in black hoodies and black and white clown makeup. These weren't friendly clowns, not the kind that bumble around at children's parties. These were something else. They looked like gang members mixed with Art the Clown. They were all staring straight into the camera, expressionless, dead serious. But that wasn't the worst part. What made my stomach twist and my vision blur was the woman draped across their laps, naked, limp, with their white-gloved hands strategically placed on the parts of her body you don't show to the world. That woman was me. I felt like my heart was about to explode. My body buzzed with panic. No, this wasn't real. It had to be fake. AI generated. Photoshopped. But then I remembered the greasy white smudge on my pillowcase, the water bottle I didn't recall drinking, and how awful I'd felt when I woke up. Texts were flooding in from Patricia. She was pissed. I needed to answer her, but I couldn't focus with that photo sitting in my gallery like a loaded gun. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. It's just a prank, I told myself. Some kind of sick, glitched image or joke. I deleted it, closed my eyes, breathed in, breathed out. Then I opened my eyes, ready to text her back, but that freaking picture was back on my phone. Clumsy me, I thought, and deleted it again, only to see it reappear again and again. Same image, same timestamp, same frozen horror. My chest tightened. I could feel the panic build again. I checked the metadata, and it showed it was taken last night, and with my phone. Trying not to throw up, I opened the sleep tracker app. It showed I left the bed at 2:17 a.m. and returned at 4:42 a.m. Out of bed for over 2 hours. I had no memory of that at all. There was also a sharp spike in my heart rate, and location data said I walked around the apartment. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were shaking and my stomach felt like it was trying to tie itself into knots. I went to the cops. I didn't want to be one of those people, but what else was I supposed to do? 4 strangers might have broken into my apartment and posed with me while I was unconscious. That's not a prank. That's assault. I didn't care how crazy I sounded. I had proof. That picture, the timestamp, the sleep data, the greasy white smudge on my pillow, the open water bottle. I knew something had happened. The cop at the front desk looked at the photo for maybe 5 seconds before shrugging. Possibly AI generated. He said, "What?" "We see this a lot nowadays. People prank each other with fake photos. There are websites where you can make this stuff." I blinked. "You think I made this?" He shrugged again. "Could have been anyone with access to your phone or cloud account. Could be a bug. Try changing your passwords. Make sure your Bluetooth's off when you sleep." "That's it?" I asked. "You can file a report if you want, but there's no sign of a break-in and no injuries. I don't think we'll be assigning anyone to it." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's me. That's my couch. That's my tattoo," I said, and pointed to the purple butterfly on my thigh, clearly visible in the photo. "Look," he said, already bored. "I'm not saying it's funny. I'm just saying we get this kind of thing a lot lately. You can file a report, but I doubt anyone's going to take it seriously." And that was it. I left with nothing, just me and that photo. That night I didn't sleep. I kept checking the locks. I unplugged everything. The router, Alexa, even my TV. I stuffed a towel under my bedroom door. Not sure why, but it felt safer somehow. Then I sat in bed with a kitchen knife and my laptop. At around 2 a.m. I started digging. I searched everything I could think of. Photo hacks, phone exploits, deep fake generators, sleepwalking forums. I finally found a thread buried deep in a tech forum. No usernames, just long strings of numbers and cryptic replies. Most of the thread was about something called blindfeed.exe. Not a program you download, it's something that gets pushed to your device through sketchy apps, QR codes, and even shared Wi-Fi. Once it's on your phone, it can access everything: cameras, mics, sleep data. It can delete photos, edit photos, upload them somewhere you'll never find. But the worst part, it's a part of a challenge, a dark web competition. People compete in teams to stage the most creative home invasion photos or videos, drugging their victims, dressing up, posing with them. Bonus points for intimacy, emotion, or absurdity. The more disturbing the photo, the more views it gets. The more views, the higher the score. The team with the most upvotes wins real money. Some victims never even know they've been featured. Others, well, they figure it out too late. And if your photo keeps coming back after you delete it, that means you're trending. I couldn't stay there. I packed a bag, paid cash, and checked into a crappy roadside motel under a fake name. I unplugged everything, shoved a chair under the doorknob, slept with my phone in a Faraday bag, and my knife under the pillow. Still, I woke up at 6:13 a.m. with that crawling feeling under my skin. I got up and noticed a piece of paper on the dresser. It hadn't been there when I went to sleep. I was sure of it. It was a printed photo. Me, asleep in the motel bed, surrounded by 4 clowns. 2 crouched beside me, 1 sat at the foot of the bed. The 4th clown was lying next to me, head on the same pillow, his face turned toward mine like a couple. Underneath, typed in bold black letters, "You looked better in the first one." I've done everything I can. New name, new place, no smart devices, no Wi-Fi. I sleep with the lights on. Doesn't matter. They're still playing. So if you ever find a photo on your phone that you don't remember taking, if you are unconscious in it, and you are not alone, don't delete it. Don't post it. And don't try to track it. Because the more people who see it, the more points they get. And if your photo goes viral, they'll come back for a sequel. I haven't spoken to my brother in over 6 years. No fights, no drama, just silence. One day he stopped replying, stopped calling, stopped existing in my life. Our parents passed within months of each other, and even then, he never showed up. So when I got a voicemail from his landlord saying they hadn't seen him in weeks, I should have just deleted it. But I didn't. I found a spare key taped behind the rusting electric meter, just like he always joked about when we were kids. If I ever disappear, check behind the meter. I wish I hadn't remembered that. The house smelled like mold and metal. Stale, dead air. Every light I flicked on buzzed before going dim again. Nothing looked disturbed. No signs of a break-in. No shattered glass. No chaos. Just stillness. That was somehow worse. The fridge was empty. So was the sink. The only thing running was a box fan in the living room, pointed toward an armchair that faced nothing, just the wall. A damp towel was thrown over the seat. I didn't touch it. I walked into his bedroom. It was too clean. Dust lined everything, but the bed was made. The clothes were folded, and the closet was empty. Except for the freezer. It wasn't in the kitchen. It was in the back room. A standalone, chest-style deep freezer. Padlocked shut. That alone should have been enough to turn around and leave, but I didn't. I found the bolt cutters in the garage. The lock snapped like it had been rusting for years. I had to grip the lid hard. There was frost sealing it shut. And when I opened it, the first thing I saw was a Ziploc bag full of human teeth. Loose. Some bloody. Some cracked at the root like they'd been yanked hard and fast. Underneath that, jars. Mason jars filled with meat. They weren't labeled, but one had a fingernail floating at the top. The color of the flesh was wrong. Gray-pink. Mottled. The smell. Jesus. The smell hit me like boiling bleach and rotting copper. There were bones. Small ones. Finger bones. A wrist, maybe. My vision started tunneling. I don't remember standing up, but I was suddenly in the hallway holding a jar, the lid slick with something oily. I threw it through the bathroom mirror. That's when I saw the photos. Taped to the underside of the mirror were Polaroids. My brother, shirtless, smeared with something dark, kneeling beside bodies. Bodies missing chunks, pieces. Some were missing faces. One of them was posed like it was praying. In all of them, he was smiling. He looked so proud. I tried calling the cops. No service. I bolted, left everything behind. I made it home 2 hours later, shaking so bad I couldn't hold my keys. I called the police the next morning, but when they went to the house, it was empty. No teeth, no jars. No Polaroids. Not even the freezer. Like it never existed. They tracked the landlord who swore he never called me. Said no one had rented that house in years. He thought it had been condemned. But I have the voicemail. And a tooth. I don't know what to do with it. I keep it in a plastic bag under my bed. It's not the same as the others. It's cracked and discolored, with a silver filling in the back. I know it's my brother's, because when we were kids, he knocked that exact tooth out on a bike ramp, and Mom spent $2,000 getting it fixed. I remember watching the blood pour from his mouth like he liked it. I hadn't told anyone about the tooth. I wanted to believe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't his. Maybe the photos were fake. Maybe the jars were props. Maybe I hallucinated the whole thing. Until the meat showed up on my porch, wrapped in butcher paper. No return address, no name, just a greasy, hand-scrawled note. You forgot dinner. I didn't even open it. I threw the whole thing into a public dumpster 6 blocks away. But that night I heard something chewing outside my bedroom window. It wasn't a raccoon. It was slow, wet, like something gnawing bone. I waited until sunrise to look. Just a smear of blood on the windowsill. human teeth marks in the wood. Then the smell came back. That same metal sweet stink from the freezer. It clung to my skin, my sheets, even the inside of my mouth. I started gagging in the shower. Blood clots came up in my spit. I couldn't eat for 2 days without puking. And then I started dreaming. Dreams of the freezer lid slamming shut on me, of being trapped in the dark, frozen with things that still whispered, things that moved. Dreams of my brother standing over me with bolt cutters, smiling like he did in the Polaroids. "I've been saving the good parts," he says. "You always were my favorite." One night I woke up with my mouth full of something soft and gritty. It was a tongue, not mine. I screamed so loud the neighbors called 911. Cops showed up, took one look at my blood-soaked mouth and bathroom sink full of vomit and decided I was having a breakdown. No tongue was ever found, but they put me on a list, sent a social worker. She came by 2 days later, cheerful and chirpy, offering help. So I let her in. I don't know how to explain what I saw next. Her clipboard had teeth embedded in it. Real ones, still bloody, pressed into the leather like someone had bitten it over and over. She didn't mention it. She just smiled, too wide, too long, like her skin was stretching to keep up. "Your brother says hi," she whispered as she walked out the door. "I haven't slept since." The freezer's outside my building now. Same dent in the lid, same rust pattern. But this time, the lock's on the inside, and I can hear knocking from within. I started boarding up my door yesterday. I don't leave my apartment. My phone buzzes with unknown numbers every night at 3:17 a.m. I don't answer anymore. The voicemails are just chewing sounds, slurping, gulping. Last night I looked in the mirror and saw something lodged in the back of my throat. I reached in with tweezers and pulled out a piece of paper, soaked in bile. It read, "You'll taste just like Mom." Tonight I finally opened the bag under my bed, the one with his tooth. I don't remember taking it out, but when I came to, it was in my mouth, wedged in perfectly. No blood, no pain, like it had always belonged there. I ran to the bathroom mirror, heart jackhammering in my chest. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the flashlight when the power cut out. The face staring back wasn't mine. It was his. Not a hallucination, not a reflection. His eyes, his mouth, his smile. I screamed and tore the tooth out with pliers. Blood poured from my gums, dripped into the sink, pooled around the base. I heard the knocking again, from inside the mirror this time. Then his voice, soft and close, like he was breathing down my neck. "Took you long enough." That's when I understood. The teeth, the jars, the tongue, the smell. He wasn't preserving bodies. He was preserving himself, piece by piece, in others. In me. The freezer wasn't to hide the dead. It was a delivery system. I was never meant to find him. I was meant to become him. Hey, I'm not familiar with this subreddit, but I know it's vaguely about getting advice for some strange stuff that happens. So I'm posting this because I'm running out of options. I'm not even sure if there's anything anyone can do. I just need to get this out there. A little background. I'm 23, pretty healthy, and I don't usually get headaches or migraines. The only medication I take is 20 milligrams escitalopram for mild depression, and I've been on it for 2 years with 0 side effects. It started a few weeks ago. At first it was nothing bad, just a dull ache. I thought I was dehydrated, so I drank some water and took ibuprofen. It went away, so I forgot about it. But later that night, while eating dinner, the headache came back, this time a bit worse. Once again, I took an ibuprofen and continued with eating and the rest of my nightly routine. Then at about 2 or 3 a.m., I was suddenly awoken by a throbbing pain in my skull. It was of an intensity I have never had before in my life. It was like someone was constantly squeezing and pushing into my brain while it was inside my head. Stupidly, I took some stronger painkillers to see if that would do anything, but the pain didn't go away. It only got worse. I could feel my brain pulsating as it reeked with this hot, searing pain. I ended up throwing up due to the severity of the pain. I decided that I couldn't wait for my GP to be open, so I woke my partner up and got him to drive me down to a nearby 24-hour medical center. Apparently, we decided to pick the one night where everyone had a medical emergency, because the place was full of people. So we had to wait for probably hours while I was rolling around in pain. Finally, the doctor called me to have a look. I think I leapt out of my chair. I couldn't wait. I described my symptoms while he checked for other abnormalities. The only thing noted was that my blood pressure was slightly lower than normal. He said nothing seemed seriously wrong, prescribed painkillers, and told me to come back if it didn't improve, so he could refer me to a specialist. A massive waste of time, I thought. But I tried the painkillers anyway, figuring it couldn't get any worse. After a few days of dealing with this near-constant headache, I tried to see another doctor. This time, they managed to refer me to a neurologist who ended up giving me a CT scan. Having to wait nearly 2 days to get the results back was one of the most anxiety-inducing experiences in my life. By then, I was throwing up nearly every day and felt exhausted all the time. I hoped it was just from the pain. When I got a call from the doctor, my stomach dropped. She told me to immediately admit myself to a hospital because the CT scans had indicated brain swelling. She said that at this point, they wouldn't need any surgery, but I needed to be kept for monitoring, and they needed to give me an MRI so they could get a better look to see how bad the swelling was. My time at the hospital blurred. I waited a whole week for the MRI results while my symptoms worsened. I couldn't keep food down, could barely see sometimes, and my blood pressure kept dropping. I even thought about ending it all, but a hospital is the worst place for that. When the results came back, I knew they were bad. The doctor, while trying to keep a calm exterior, was failing miserably. A slight look of fear was painted all over her face. "Good afternoon, Marcus. How are you feeling today?" "I just want to know about the results. I can't wait any longer." "I've reviewed your MRI results with our radiology team, and the findings were a bit unusual." "What does that mean?" She swallowed dryly. "Marcus, we were wrong about the initial assumption about your brain swelling. It's not. It's growing." "Growing? What do you mean growing?" "I mean that the overall volume of your brain has slowly but measurably been expanding, specifically in the frontal and parietal lobes. There's no fluid buildup, no tumor, no signs of infection of any kind. The tissue itself seems healthy. It's just growing." "How is that even possible?" "We don't know. The human brain doesn't grow in adulthood, certainly not like this. Neurons don't generate that way. We've checked the images and even rescanned to rule out errors, but it's definitely grown by just a few millimeters." "What does this mean? Is it going to stop?" I can tell she's choosing her words carefully. "We don't know. This isn't a known condition. Right now we're focusing on managing the pressure in your skull and tracking the growth rate. If it continues, we may need to surgically relieve the pressure to prevent damage." "You're talking about cutting into my skull?" "Only if it becomes critical. For now, we're monitoring closely, giving you medication to reduce intracranial pressure. But I want to be honest. This isn't something we've seen before. It's not textbook. We've had to consult with other neurologists and research hospitals. No one's seen anything like this." Some suggested rapid onset gliosis, but your markers don't match. One of them floated a prion-like process, but that doesn't explain the organization or the activity. What is that supposed to mean? She gives me a hesitant look before divulging further. There are coordinated signals, patterns we don't typically see in those parts of the brain or in tissue that has recently formed. So it's not just growing, it's working. We don't know what it means yet, but whatever this is, it's not inert, it's functional, and that's what concerns us. That was yesterday. I keep asking questions, but they're not telling me much. I can almost feel it growing and pushing against my skull. I'm scared. I think I'm going to die. If anyone has any idea what this could be, or what I should do, please help. I'm desperate. I miss my husband. I sat crouched on the stairs, peering out from behind the wall, watching the man having breakfast at our dining room table. The man I married 2 years ago held a steaming coffee mug up to his lips, taking slow, short sips. On the other hand, he held a book, flipping a page occasionally. He didn't seem to notice I was there. He was just sitting there as if everything had been completely normal. The man gently set down his mug and brought his elbow to the table to rest his head on his hand, now looking away from me. The spread of food on the table was now cold. He had been waiting for me to come downstairs for almost 20 minutes. I narrowed my eyes at him and took a deep breath, careful to exhale slowly. I didn't want him to notice me. He lifted his head from his hand and set down the mug. Leaning back into the chair, he shook his head. The layers in his black-brown hair swayed side to side before setting back down at the nape of his neck. I stared for a while longer, unable to find any inconsistencies. He definitely looked like my husband. Everything about him was right. His choice of coffee and pancakes, the way his eyebrows formed a slight frown as he stared at the book, even down to his stupid hair flip. He always flipped his hair like that. I stretched my legs in front of me and pressed down on the step with my hands. Maybe I was imagining it. I stared down at my legs. I had been known to be suspicious at times. The feeling that something was wrong was not foreign to me. This feeling and the events surrounding it had been a recurring theme in my life for as long as I could remember. When I was 10, I fell from a tree. My brother and I had been playing outside all day and decided to race to the top of an oak tree at the edge of our property. My brother, being older, had gotten the lead, and I, being desperate to catch up, decided I would leap from branch to branch. I was about halfway up the tree when I felt my foot slip, and suddenly I fell forward almost 12 feet down and landed on my shoulder. My vision went dark. My mom stood over me when I woke up, shaking me slightly. I looked around, but I was laying on my living room floor. Apparently I had taken a nap on the couch and fell. I never climbed a tree, and my brother had been at his friend's house all day. That was my mom's story, but that's not what really happened. Similarly, when I was 14, we picked up the family car from the shop. I commented how it was possible that the point had faded so much, making the once black car appear navy blue. Apparently, it had always been navy blue, except it hadn't. It wasn't until the night of my senior prom that I put everything together. At the dance, my then boyfriend and I had gotten into a fight. I decided to call my parents. My dad picked up the phone groggily, having just been dead asleep, and agreed to come get me. When I climbed into the car with my father, who had not managed to make it out of his pajamas, he asked if I wanted to talk. I didn't, so for a long time we drove home in complete silence. I watched the road as the car maneuvered through the winding back roads, the darkness being lit up only by the car's headlights and the occasional dim streetlight. Suddenly, what looked like a dog flashed across the street in front of us and dashed into the woods. My dad slammed on the brakes, and the car came to a screeching halt. He insisted he had to get out and check if the dog was okay. He got out and walked out of my sight, past the range of the headlights into the pitch blackness in front of us. I waited anxiously, my eyes locked on the area where I last saw him, and after what felt like an eternity, a figure emerged and strode quickly to the car. It was a man. This man wore my dad's dress shirt and pants with his lanyard and ID card around his neck. He made his way to the driver's side and got in looking at me. "I guess it ran off. I didn't see it," he said. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I wasn't sure how long or loud I screamed before realizing I could not breathe. My throat felt tight and I had to focus to take a deep breath. Throughout this, the man looked at me with a shocked expression, holding his hands up trying to calm me, and finally he did. Once the initial shock wore off and I had a moment to compose myself, I realized what this meant. At some point in the day, I had made a choice, either minor or major, that had led me to swap realities. I was now in a dimension almost like my own, where the only difference was that my father had worked late. I miss my dad. The real one, anyway. I wondered, if I was with a fake dad, then was fake me with my real dad? Had she screamed seeing a man in pajamas climb into the car? Had she put the pieces together the same way I did? I hated this feeling. It was this very, very feeling that had motivated me to tell Alex of my fear of these alternate universes, the places that almost felt right if it weren't for an unpleasant tinge of unease. I didn't know what caused these universe shifts, and I was scared. The differences in these universes were never major. People always had the same jobs, same spouses, and same personalities. Usually, it was the placement of their furniture, a different mannerism, or a forgotten memory. A memory that should have been important enough to remain the same. Before we were married, I had explained to him my thoughts, and together we established a way to determine whether one of us had shifted universes. A password of sorts, a sequence of numbers we would say to be sure we were still in the same place. Every morning, sometime while getting ready for work, I would call out the numbers to him and he would repeat them back to me. Every single morning. But as you can imagine, today was the day our unofficial routine changed. When I woke up, he was already out of bed. I thought it was strange, but heard him shifting downstairs and moving plates and silverware. I began dressing and fixing my hair in the mirror and called out to him. "Alex, 1052. I paused and waited for his response. "What?" Alex called back. Except this wasn't Alex. Alex wouldn't have said that. He would have said 1052. A chill ran up my spine as my eyes began searching the bedroom. Everything seemed to be in its rightful place, so I called the number a second time. The reply that came was more high-pitched and drawn out. "What?" Somehow stretching the word into 2 syllables. My heart sank into my chest, and suddenly I felt very cold. Why was he downstairs anyway? We always made breakfast together. That was when I decided to tiptoe downstairs and look at who was in our kitchen. I've been sitting here since. My eyes shifted from my legs to my shoes. The black flats I wore to work every day had scrapes and scratches all down the sides. They hadn't looked like that yesterday. I worked in an office. How would I even get so many scuffs? "What are you doing?" I jolted backward as a gasp escaped my throat. I wanted to scream and run, but I was frozen in place. I stared up at the man before me, unable to breathe, my heart racing in my chest. "What's wrong?" he said. looking behind him and then back at me. His expression was somewhere between worried and confused. "Why didn't you say it back?" My voice came out shaky. He stared at me for a moment before frowning and lowering his chin. "Alea?" he said while lowering himself to my eye level. "Are you okay?" His eyes scanned my face. "How do I know you're still you?" I said, "if you don't say it back." He tilted his head slightly and his eyes softened. "Is this about your reality shifting again?" he said, his mouth forming a slight smile. I studied his face, his pupils dilating as he stared back at me, still smiling, awaiting my response. This had to be Alex. What else would it be about? I said, breaking eye contact. "Come on, Alea. I told you not to worry about that anymore. We're still here together in the same place we've always been." He rose slowly to his feet, still facing me. "Now come and eat, or we'll both be late." I forced myself to stand up, keeping my eyes on the floor. That wasn't the password, but at least fake Alex wasn't evil. I could live with that. I had to anyway. I'm writing this at 4:47 a.m. because I can't go back to sleep. Hell, I don't think I'll ever sleep again. Not after what I just saw. Or what I think I saw. I'm honestly not sure anymore. Let me start from the beginning because maybe if I write this all down, it'll make sense. Yesterday was one of those days that just beats the hell out of you. Double shifts at the warehouse, my supervisor breathing down my neck about quotas, and my back screaming from lifting boxes for 12 hours straight. All I wanted when I got home was a hot shower in my bed. I turned the water on and sat on the edge of my mattress while it heated up. Just for a second, I told myself. Just until the steam starts fogging the mirror. The next thing I knew, I was waking up to the sound of running water. My apartment was thick with humidity, and I could hear the shower still going full blast. Great. I'd fallen asleep and wasted God knows how much hot water. My landlord was going to love the utility bill. That's when I tried to get up and realized I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis. I'd had it a few times before, usually when I was stressed or exhausted. Your mind wakes up, but your body stays locked in sleep. It's terrifying, but I knew it would pass. I just had to wait it out. But then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Footsteps in my bathroom. Heavy, wet footsteps slapping against the tile. A voice echoed from behind the shower curtain, distorted by the water and steam. I can't get clean." The footsteps stopped. Then suddenly the shower curtain was ripped aside and someone stumbled out of my bathroom. I wanted to scream, but my paralysis held me prisoner. All I could do was watch as this thing stood dripping in my doorway. It looked like a man, but wrong. His skin was gray and slimy, covered in what looked like pond scum. Dark patches of mold spread across his arms and chest like bruises. Water poured off him in sheets, pooling at his feet. "I can't get clean," he screamed, his voice raw and desperate. He stumbled back into the kitchen and I heard him climb back into the shower. The water changed pitch as his body moved under the stream. This happened again and again. Each time he emerged, he looked worse. The scum grew thicker. Barnacles began sprouting from his shoulders and neck like grotesque jewelry. His skin took on a greenish tint, and something that looked suspiciously like seaweed hung from his hair. "I can't get clean," he'd mutter, quieter now, defeated. Then louder, "I can't get clean." I lost count of how many times he repeated this ritual. My paralysis held me captive as this nightmare played out in my bathroom. The humidity in my apartment became suffocating. The sound of running water mixed with his desperate sobs. until I thought I might go insane. Then everything went black. When I came to, he was standing over my bed. His face was inches from mine, if you could still call it a face. Barnacles had claimed his left cheek. Something green and slimy dripped from his mouth onto my pillow. His eyes, bloodshot and wild, stared directly into mine. "I can't get clean," he shrieked. The shock broke my paralysis. I jolted awake, gasping and shaking. My room was dark and quiet. No moldy jam, just me, soaked in sweat. Heart pounding against my ribs. Sleep paralysis. It had to be. The most vivid, terrifying episode I'd ever experienced, but just a hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. I laughed shakily, running my hands through my damp hair. That's when I noticed my apartment was still humid. I looked toward my bathroom and my veins ran cold. There, leading from my bedroom to the bathroom, was a trail of wet footprints, and from behind my closed bathroom door I could hear the unmistakable sound of running water. I'm sitting in my car now, parked outside a 24-hour diner, writing this on my phone. I grabbed my keys and ran. I couldn't bring myself to open that bathroom door. I don't know what to do. I can't go back there, but I also can't afford to find a new place. And who would believe this story anyway? Has anyone else experienced something like this? I keep telling myself it was just a nightmare, but those footprints, they were real. I don't think I'm ever going home, but my rearview mirror is starting to fog up. I know how this is going to sound. I'm not stupid. I know Reddit isn't exactly the best place for a blind person to talk about seeing things. That's the point. I've been blind since birth. Total blindness. Zero light perception. Nothing. My world is touch, sound, smell, memory, and routine. I've never seen anything. Not even in dreams. Not even once. Until last week. And now I think I'm going to die. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor of a pretty standard building in the city. I have a system, keys always clipped to my belt, guide stick by the door, phone with voiceover, everything labeled with tactile stickers. I don't need help. I walk my block with muscle memory. I know the elevator by the sound of its grind, and I can feel when a neighbor's perfume lingers in the hallway. That's how dialed in I am to my environment. So when something changes, I notice. It started 5 nights ago. I woke up around 3 a.m. with this weird sense. Not a noise, not a smell, just a presence. Like something was there in the room with me. I thought maybe my neighbor's cat had gotten in again. It's happened before. Little guy slips through cracked doors. I sat up in bed and called out, "Hey, anyone there?" I felt for the edges of my blanket. My hand trembled. Nothing, just still air. Then I felt it, like a shape in the room, like how you can feel when someone's standing too close behind you, even without hearing them breathe. But worse, it felt wrong. Like its shape didn't match anything that should be able to stand upright. Too tall but narrow, and still too still. I froze. Every hair on my arm stood up. I reached out into the empty air and felt nothing, but in my chest I could feel it watching me. Not seeing, watching. The next morning I laughed it off. Sleep paralysis, maybe. A dream I didn't know I was dreaming. I have a therapist and I told her. She asked if I was stressed. I said yeah, a little. My job's been weird lately, and sometimes the city noise gets under my skin. But the next night, it came back. Same time, 3 a.m., same presence. I kept my eyes open, which sounds weird, I know, but when you're blind, Eyes open just means facing the dark. I laid there, breathing slow, trying not to move. And this time it moved. It shifted closer. The air in the room changed, like it dragged something with it. The pressure, the silence, the texture of the nothing around me. Then I heard it. Not a word, a sound, a click. Soft, deliberate. It had joints, and it was cracking them like fingers. I haven't slept since Tuesday. I pretend I'm not at home at night. Headphones on, lights on. Though that's for the neighbors, not me. But I know it still comes. I feel it standing just outside the room. Sometimes I hear it dragging its hand across the walls. Sometimes I hear it whispering in a voice that sounds like mine. Yesterday I knocked over my coffee mug in the kitchen. When I bent to pick it up, I swear I felt something cold brush the back of my neck. A finger. Long, smooth, curious. Tonight it did something new. It knocked 3 times, slow, on the inside of my bedroom closet. I haven't opened that door in a week. I don't know what it wants, but it's learning. It's figuring out how I move, how I live, how I try to ignore it. And now I think it knows I can sense it. That I'm not just a blind person to it anymore. I'm something else. A mirror? A target? If you're reading this, you probably think I'm crazy. I would too. But something in my apartment, it wasn't there before, and every time it comes back, it gets closer. I don't think I have much time left. If it touches me again, if it climbs into bed like I think it did last night, I won't survive it. Please, if anyone's heard of something like this, tell me what it is. Because I swear I never used to see anything, and now I can't stop sensing it. Quick note up top. Yes, I'm still alive. No, I didn't sleep. Yes, it came back, and now I know for sure. It knows I can sense it. It's not pretending anymore. At 2:58 a.m., Willow, my dog, started growling at the closet, not barking, growling real low. She never does that. She pressed into my legs like she wanted me to pick her up, and I could feel her trembling. And then I felt it again. Not outside, not in the hall, inside the closet. It stood up. The pressure changed, like the shape of the air shifted. Something tall, taller than a person, narrow, jointed. I could feel its form, not by touching it, but by how it bent the room around it. And then came the voice. It didn't speak like a human. It didn't even make a sound. The voice was inside my thoughts, echoed with my own tone. "You're not supposed to know I'm here." It sounded disappointed, like I ruined a surprise party. Then it moved, up, onto the ceiling. It didn't climb, it just changed location. And it began matching my breathing. I called my therapist in the morning. I told her I was noticing things. She asked, calm as anything, "Has it started interacting with you directly?" I said yes. I asked if she'd ever heard of this before. Her answer chilled me more than the voice did. Some people, especially blind from birth, may perceive things the rest of us can't. If something doesn't want to be perceived, noticing it gives it shape. She told me not to sleep in silence. It listens better when it's quiet, and then she hung up. I tried staying out. Took Willow and found a diner, ordered coffee I didn't need, sat with my back to the wall. Around 4 a.m. the waitress came by, refilled my cup, and as she placed it down, its voice came out of her mouth. "You shouldn't be able to notice me." Then she walked away like nothing happened. This morning while brushing my teeth I felt it, not behind me, not beside me, in front of me. Too close, and in that space, not with eyes but with something else, I saw it. A face, my face, grinning wide. It hovered there, inches away. No breath, no warmth, just watching. I dropped the toothbrush and ran. I slammed the door. I couldn't scream. I don't know what this thing is, but I know this. I was blind my whole life, and now I can see one thing. Just one, and it's getting closer. If you're reading this, it means I lived long enough to hit post. I don't know if I'll be alive when you read it. I don't know if I should be. At 2:51 a.m., I felt it coming. Not like before. Not from the closet. From the building itself. Floor by floor. Closer. I stood in the living room, heart pounding, Willow shaking at my feet. And then, silence. Real silence. Like reality stopped vibrating. Then its voice came, behind my thoughts. You called me into shape. Now you have to see. And suddenly I saw everything. Not the world, not the room. It. All of it. A body made of space, skin stretched over nothing. Long arms, twisting joints. No mouth, but still it smiled. And then it touched my forehead. I blacked out. When I woke up, I couldn't move. My ribs are broken. My mouth tastes like blood. The closet door is open, and I heard my voice, my exact voice, say from outside, I'm going to work. It wasn't me. It said it perfectly. It's out there now, wearing me. I was blind my whole life, and now I can see it. That's all it ever wanted. To be seen, to be real. And now, it is. Edit. Hey guys. Wow. Just found this old post. Honestly, no idea what I was thinking. I've stopped drinking, feeling way better now. Clear-headed for the first time in a while. I think I was having a rough patch or something. All that weird, spooky stuff. Definitely just stress or sleep dep or something. Kinda embarrassing, honestly. If anyone knows how to delete a post, please DM me. Don't want anyone getting the wrong idea or thinking I've lost it. Anyway, thanks for reading, I guess. Hope you're all doing well. I never thought I'd write this down, but I need to get it out before it drives me insane. What happened wasn't some ghost story or urban legend. It was real, brutal, and too close for comfort. I live alone in a pretty quiet building. Nothing fancy, no big crowds or parties. Just me and the usual humdrum of life. There's this one neighbor, an older guy. We barely talked, just polite nods in the hallway. He was the kind of person who kept to himself, always locked inside his apartment. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of him staring out the window late at night, but he never said a word. One night I was up late working. Around 2 a.m. I heard a weird scraping noise from his unit, like metal dragged across the floor. At first I thought it was some furniture moving or repairs, but it kept going, getting louder, more frantic. I tried ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I peeked through the peephole. His door was slightly cracked open. The scraping stopped. I was about to knock when a sharp, wet thud hit the floor inside. My heart froze. I could swear I heard a low, guttural groan, like someone struggling to breathe. I called the building's maintenance, told them what I heard, but they brushed it off. Probably just him. He's harmless, they said. The next morning, I noticed something off. The hallway near his door smelled awful, like rotting meat mixed with chemicals. It was faint, but enough to make me gag. I went to check the mailboxes downstairs. His key was stuck in the lock, like he'd left in a hurry or forgot. I reported it again, but no one did anything. Days later, I finally had enough. I called the police anonymously and told them about the noises and the smell. When they forced the door open, what they found still haunts me. His apartment was a nightmare. The walls were smeared with dried blood and strange symbols scratched into the plaster. In the corner, There was a makeshift table with tools that looked like they belonged in a horror movie. Scalpels, saws, clamps, all stained dark red. On the floor, I won't lie, were body parts. Human. I still can't erase that image. Turns out he was kidnapping people, strangers, drifters. He kept them captive to study them. The victims' remains were hidden in false compartments behind the walls. The scraping noise I heard? Him trying to move the bodies around in the dead of night. The police said they found evidence he'd been doing this for years, covering it up perfectly. Nobody suspected a thing because he was so quiet, so invisible. I can't sleep in my apartment anymore. Every creak, every shadow, feels like he's still here watching. The worst part, they never found his last victim. They think they're still hidden somewhere inside those walls. I don't know how to explain it, but if you ever hear strange noises late at night, and it smells like death lingering in the air, don't ignore it. Some monsters won't scream or fight. They just sit quietly, waiting for their next move. After the police stormed the place, the building emptied out fast. Most of the tenants left within a week. I stayed. I don't know why. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe I wanted answers. But the nightmares didn't stop. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, hearing that same metallic scraping echoing through the walls. Even after the unit was sealed off, I swore I heard movement, faint shuffling, like someone dragging their feet just behind the drywall. One night, maybe 3 weeks later, I got drunk enough to knock on the sealed door. I laughed to myself. It was stupid. I turned around to head back, but then I heard it. A voice, hoarse, barely audible. "Help, please." My blood ran cold. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then again. A weak knock from inside. I ran back to my apartment and just sat there shaking. I didn't call the cops. I didn't want them to think I was cracking up. But that night I couldn't sleep. Around 4 a.m. I made a decision I regret every second now. I broke in. I had a spare key from when I used to help him with his mail. I don't know why I still had it, but I did. The cops had duct taped the lock and bolted the door shut. But nothing a claw hammer couldn't rip through. The stench hit me like a punch. Rot, iron, chemicals, something wrong. I covered my face and stepped inside. The crime scene tape still hung like streamers, but what caught my eye was the floor. Fresh drag marks in the dust. Something, or someone, had been moved recently. I followed them. They led to the bedroom closet. That closet had a false back. The cops missed it. Behind the plaster wall was a narrow crawl space, pitch black. The drag marks went inside. I crawled in, phone flashlight in hand. It smelled worse in there. Wet, warm, alive. The space opened into a small concrete room, unfinished and hidden deep between the walls. That's where I found her. Or what was left of her. A woman half naked, wrists bound in wire, flesh shredded like she'd been carved piece by piece. Her left eye was missing. Her lips were sewn shut with thread that cut into her skin. She was still breathing, barely. She saw me and made a sound I can't describe. Pain, rage, relief. I screamed for help and scrambled out. Called emergency services with shaking hands. She survived. They say barely. She'd been there for at least a month. But here's the twist. She wasn't the last victim. I was. 2 nights later, I woke up on the floor of my own apartment. The power was out. My door was locked from the inside. There were pictures taped to my walls. Photos of me sleeping, brushing my teeth, showering. Hundreds, all taken from inside my apartment. In one of them I was wide-eyed, staring at the camera. I have no memory of that moment. There was a note tucked under my bed, written in neat block letters. You should have left it alone. I was done. Now I'm not. The police swept the place again. Nothing. No cameras, no fingerprints, no forced entry. They think it was some sick prank, maybe a copycat, but I know it was him. He never left. He was watching the whole time. Maybe hiding in the walls, maybe under the floorboards, maybe right behind me. I moved out the next day. Sometimes I still wake up with fresh scratches on my back, deep like nails or a scalpel. Sometimes I smell that metallic rot, even in a new city. Sometimes I hear the dragging, and every time I wonder if he's still playing. Maybe next time. He won't let me wake up. I don't know who else he's watching. I don't know if I'll survive next time. But if you hear dragging sounds at night, don't open the door. I saw him when I had woken up in the middle of the night. My dogs were barking at something, but it wasn't normal barking. It was more like the sounds dogs make when they're scared, whimpering and yelping. When I got up, I could hear the dogs backing away from something. I could hear their paws rustling through the dirt, growing more and more desperate. At that moment, I was worried that some kind of animal had gotten inside the fence. I should have known it wasn't an animal. The only dangerous animals out here in the countryside are foxes. But I didn't care. I went outside with a machete. The first thing I see is a man wearing a cloak, a wide-brimmed hat, a short cape, and carrying a staff. He was dirty, with mud stains all over the lower half of his body. I froze not from fear, but from surprise. I live in the middle of nowhere, out in the countryside where the road to my house is just a dirt path that goes on for kilometers and leads nowhere. It looked like he wanted to pet my dogs. He had his hand stretched out and was walking strangely, using one hand to grab and drag his leg forward while holding on to his staff. All the while, my dogs barked louder and louder. I approached him, gripping the machete tighter with every step. I raised my hand to touch his shoulder. I felt every movement, my finger getting closer, my muscles tensing, my body leaning in. I touched his shoulder. He began to stand up with the help of his staff, digging it into the ground, using his strength to straighten up, and he began to turn around. The second he turned, the dogs bolted back into my house. He was still looking down, and suddenly he laughed. It was a deep laugh, like Santa Claus if he smoked a pack a day since birth. He stopped laughing slowly, then said, "Forgive me. I saw the dogs from afar and had to see them," he said in a kind tone. I got a little angry. He was speaking to me like he was strolling through the suburbs and just saw a dog in front of a house. He was in the middle of nowhere, and besides, there is only one way to get here, and you have to go off the road completely. So I asked him directly, "Okay, but why are you in this area?" I sounded a bit annoyed. The man sighed and spoke seriously. "I'm on a journey to a place, and I stopped here to see one of God's creatures. Again, I apologize. It wasn't my intention to wake you or scare your dogs." I stared at him confused, and he said, "I'll go now. I can't stop for long. I have a long road ahead." He chuckled softly. He was an old man, and morally I couldn't just let him walk alone in the night, especially out in the countryside where he clearly must have gotten lost, if he ended up near my house. "I'm not going to let you go alone. Let me grab my things and I'll take you where you want to go in my car." The man, still not revealing his face, looking down and completely still, said, "Excipia." I didn't understand, but he stayed still. So I went inside to grab my things. When I came in, I saw the paw prints had stained the wooden floor, and I could hear the dogs whimpering, howling from my room. I turned on the lights to find and grab my car keys and jacket. I went to my room and saw the dogs hiding under my bed. It felt exaggerated, like when Scooby-Doo sees a monster. The point is, I had never seen them like that. I kept ignoring the signs and grabbed my jacket from the wardrobe, picked up the keys from my nightstand and went back outside, closing the door behind me. It was starting to get light, like a breath of relief from the tension and unease of the night. The man was still there, waiting for me where I had left him. In the daylight, I could see him more clearly. His hands gripping the staff were gray, wrinkled, looking like the skin could fall off any moment. He was still looking down, but I could make out more of his face. From afar, I saw his mouth hanging open, drooling. I figured, because of his age, it might be normal. Maybe he didn't have the strength to keep his mouth closed. I started walking toward him. With every step, he seemed to lose the strength to hold himself up. His body looked like it was falling apart. I began to hurry, feeling the sunlight blinding me. When I finally got close, I was standing in front of him and he had collapsed. When I tried to lift him, he wouldn't let me, until I grabbed him by the arms and his hood fell back. It was a rotting corpse, like he had died years ago. I dropped him. Thump. His clothes shifted, revealing more of his body. I could see his chest. There was a huge hole exposing his ribs, and on each rib was written, Qui per terras ignotus iter facit. He who travels through unknown lands. The phrase comes from the old pilgrims who journeyed through foreign lands out of devotion to God. The only thing I can imagine is that his pilgrimage wasn't finished, and if something above is watching, it decided not to let him die until his journey was complete. But why did his journey end at the door of my house? What does this land, what do I, have to do with God? The forest is older than you, older than your God. Show respect or be forgotten. Old Appalachian saying. The summer before I started college, I set my sights on hiking a portion of the Appalachian Trail. I had been planning it for years. Daily hikes through the woods in my town, solo camping trips, collecting gear one piece at a time with what I could scrape together. When I told my dad, he insisted on coming with me. For protection, he said. The irony is bitter now. I had protection. I had my bundle of sage and rosemary, coins, a lock of my hair, a satchel of salt, and iron nails I kept buried deep in my bag, passed down from my grandmother, who never once entered the forest without hers. I also had protection against the more mortal predators, bear spray, a knife, a taser, but no talisman in the world could prepare me for what we'd awaken. When I showed Dad my supplies, he laughed. You mean your little bags of seasoning and trinkets? Those won't save you from a bear or a murderer. They weren't meant to, I had muttered. Rule 1. Keep salt and iron on you. I'd learned that salt purifies and iron protects. A line of either can mean the difference between going home or being taken. The trailhead was too quiet when we arrived. Not peaceful. Empty. The air felt wrong, like the forest was waiting for something. Watching. The leaves didn't rustle. The birds didn't sing. Dad didn't notice. He stomped along in brand new boots, whistling a tune off key. His cheerful noise died instantly after leaving his lips, swallowed by the woods. I stayed silent, tucked the iron nail under my shirt where it brushed my collarbone, cold against my skin. Rule 2. Don't whistle in the woods, my grandmother had said. It calls spirits to you. We hiked for hours. As the afternoon went by, the trees changed. The pines grew tighter, closer, wrong. Their trunks were too thick, bark gnarled and blackened like burned flesh. The air grew hot and humid, despite the elevation, wet like a held breath. Light barely filtered through the thickening canopy. Even in the middle of the day, it was gray and dim. That's when I felt it. Not saw. Felt. Like something massive, ancient, and cold had stirred beneath the earth and opened one eye. I stopped walking. Dad noticed and turned back. "You coming, Ellie?" he shouted, holding a walking stick that he probably found somewhere on the side of the trail. He had just broken 2 rules in one go. Rule 3. Don't speak your name too loud. It lets them know who you are. Rule 4. You never take things from the forest. Leave every stone, stick, and bone as you found it. I remembered. Some things belong to the forest. Some things guard it. Yeah, I lied, noticing that we had somehow wandered off the main trail, hopefully not too far. I shouldn't have been blindly following my dad, knowing that he didn't know how to read trail markers. Rule 5. Stay out of hollers you don't know. Some places are thin, I'd read. Time folds. Trails change. You might walk forever and never leave. We kept going, trying to veer back towards the main trail. Then we saw it. Right in the center of the path, a pile of blackened stones encircling a bare patch of dirt, and in its center, a bundle of twigs bound tightly with hair. Human, by the look of it. Long, reddish-blonde strands matted together with something dark. The air stank. Copper, rot, and blood baked into the soil. "Leave it," I said, my voice low and sharp. "It's a warning." Dad knelt down and poked at it with his walking stick. Probably just some hiker's weird little voodoo project. "Don't let it freak you out." And then he muttered, "Superstitious nonsense," under his breath. "Dad, stop. Don't touch it." But it was too late. The stick scattered the stones. The wind shifted instantly sharp, cold, unnatural. It cut through the trees, though not a single branch moved. Then came the whistle, not like Dad's rambling melody. It was a piercing, slow, almost human sound that climbed and fell in a way that made my teeth hurt. It came from nowhere, everywhere, behind us, ahead. Dad stood up abruptly. "Did you hear that?" I grabbed his arm. "Don't look back. Don't speak. Walk. Now." We walked, but now all signs of a trail were gone. The trees closed in behind us. We passed the same tree again and again. Its bark split in 3 deep, vertical slashes, too wide to be from a bear. "How are we going in circles?" Dad barked. "We've been walking straight the whole time." A second whistle cut through the air, closer this time. "Run!" I screamed. We ran, branches tore at us, a fog suddenly descending and obscuring our vision. Something moved through the trees with us, long-limbed, unnaturally fast. I caught glimpses. A shape with too many joints, a body that bent the wrong way, a face that shimmered and changed, wearing my face, then his, then neither. Rule 6. That's not a deer. My grandmother had sat me down, a grave expression on her face. If it walks like a deer but the joints are wrong, if it looks at you like it knows you, if it stands on 2 legs, run. Don't scream. Don't look back. Looking back is an invitation to follow. We didn't stop running until night fell and the thing was no longer behind us. Dad collapsed onto a log, panting and pale. "I think we're lost," he whispered. "You think?" I hissed, already digging into my pack for the salt. "We should set up camp," I said. No way we're finding a way out in the dark. He didn't move, just sat there shivering. Ellie, that thing. It looked like a deer, but it wasn't. It stood like a man, and its face, my God, its face. He trailed off. You shouldn't have touched the stones. My voice was flat. Help me with the fire. Dinner was tasteless, quiet. I didn't even bother to finish my food. I poured a ring of salt around our camp and placed iron nails at each corner. It was all I could do. I woke to absolute darkness. The fire was out. The forest had gone still. Deadly quiet. Like a killer sneaking up on a sleeping victim. Then I heard it. Dad, Dad, help me. My voice, but not. Off pitch, like a recording played at the wrong speed. The cadence all wrong, like someone trying to speak a language they didn't understand. I froze in fear, my heart pounding out of my chest. Dad was already out of his tent, stumbling toward the sound. Ellie, where are you? He shouted. I burst from my tent and grabbed his arm. That's not me. I'm right here. He jumped and screamed in alarm and then turned to me shaking. Then who is that? Listen. We stood in silence. Then, Dad, I'm scared. Please help me. Closer and closer. The underbrush rustled past the tree line. I turned slowly. Something stood just beyond the edge of camp. Glowing eyes. Not animal eyes. Intelligent. Patient. Watching. Rule 7. If you see glowing eyes, run. More rustling. More eyes. Back to camp, now, I whispered. We scrambled back. I dumped the rest of the salt around the fire pit in a frantic circle, hands shaking as I stumbled to get the flames going again. From the trees it came again. Dad? Ellie? Help me. Help. Voices overlapped, changed, twisted into a gurgling laughter. More glowing eyes emerged. 5, 6, maybe a dozen, all too high off the ground, blinking out and reappearing in different spots like whatever they belonged to didn't walk, but crawled. We huddled by the fire. I threw sage into the flames and it hissed and sparked. Some of the eyes blinked, some just stared. Then one of the voices whispered, from right outside the edge of the firelight, "You shouldn't have touched it." The voices kept circling the camp. Some cried, some laughed. Some whispered things I couldn't understand, not in English, not in any language people were meant to know. The sounds grated at my eardrums and I covered my ears. Dad sat stiff and pale beside me, eyes wide, clenching the iron nail I'd forced into his palm earlier. He looked like he wanted to scream but couldn't open his mouth. Like something might crawl in if he did. I knew we couldn't sleep. We couldn't even blink for too long. We waited. The fire our only defense. My hand hovered near the salt pouch. Though it was nearly empty now, something flickered at the edge of the flames. Not in the shadows, inside the fire itself. A face, not a reflection. A face. Watching. Smiling, hungry. This isn't just a haunting, I whispered. It's a feeding ground. The forest had sealed us in. It wanted stories, memories, faces, flesh, and we had trespassed. We had touched what was sacred, broken the old laws. Sometime past midnight, the fire burned low, and that's when the laughing stopped. Replaced by another sound. Footsteps, right at the edge of the salt. Heavy, human. Then, Ellie, you always did love the woods. I froze. That voice, it was my mom's. She died when I was 8. She'd been buried in the churchyard 3 towns over, her lungs filled with pneumonia and prayers. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly a decade. But I knew it instantly. I turned. I had to. Something stood just outside the salt line. It looked like her, the right height, same dress from the funeral photo on our mantle. But the face, off. Melted, smiling too wide, eyes too big and glassy. It didn't blink, didn't breathe. Rule 8. If you hear your name, don't answer. This is one of the most important rules. No matter how familiar the voice is, no matter how sweetly it calls, it isn't who you think it is. Behind it, something larger stirred in the trees, something tall enough to brush the lowest branches. Antlers scraped, bark as it moved, but it didn't look like a deer. It looked like something wearing a deer. Dad was whispering now. "This is my fault," he whispered. "This is my fault." I didn't disagree. I looked back to the figure of Mom. It leaned forward, one bare foot tested the edge of the salt. The tips of her toes blackened instantly when they crossed the line and cracked, crumbled like burnt paper. She hissed and withdrew. Good. The salt held, but I didn't know how long it would last. I didn't know what else to do, so I did the only thing left. I asked for help. I pulled the last of my offerings from my pack, 3 small items wrapped in cloth, a coin, a piece of bread, and a strand of my own hair. I walked to the center of camp, knees shaking, and placed them down carefully on a flat stone by the fire. Then I whispered the oldest words I knew, words my grandmother taught me when I was barely old enough to speak. For those who walked before, for those who guard the green, we mean no harm. Let us go unseen. Rule 9. Leave the offerings if you must pass sacred grounds. A coin, a sweet, a bit of bread. The old ones watch. Be polite, be grateful. Do not speak their names. The forest shuddered. The wind roared suddenly through the trees, though the leaves didn't move. A deep groan echoed beneath the earth, like old roots pulling themselves free. The figures at the edge of the salt? Gone. The eyes in the trees? Vanished. Even the fire quieted. The woods fell deathly silent. Not safe, not empty, but still, like something ancient had just turned its head away, deciding for now to let us go. The sun was beginning to rise. "Now," I said, grabbing Dad by the wrist. "We go now. Don't speak, don't look back." We didn't pack anything. We didn't need to. Anything we left behind belonged to the forest now. I followed a path that hadn't been there before, a trail of crushed ferns and moss, lit faintly by a silvery glow filtering through the canopy. A deer path, but not a real one. A gift, a chance. We walked. When the sun rose fully, we found ourselves stumbled out of the tree line, back at the gravel parking lot near the trailhead. Our car was still there, covered in leaves. We didn't speak until we were 3 towns away. Dad drove like he'd just been let out of prison, hands white-knuckled, eyes wide. Eventually he looked at me and said, "You said you had protection." "I did," I said, "and it worked." He asked nervously. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure it had, because sometimes the forest lets you leave, and sometimes it just follows you home. I was born in 2000, grew up in a small town in northeast Ohio. We had one of those little ranch-style houses, all on one floor, 3 bedrooms. It was just me and my mom for most of my life. My dad left when I was a baby. She was a good mom from what I remember. We didn't have much money, but she made sure I always had what I needed. She worked as a waitress at a restaurant in the center of town. Always tired, but always kind. We'd watch movies together at night. She'd tuck me in, kiss my forehead, and tell me she loved me. I felt safe. Except at bedtime. I must have been about 6 or 7 the first time I noticed it. One night after she tucked me in, I heard the floor creak after she turned off the light. Not out in the hall, right by my bed. I remember freezing, listening. Then I heard the sound of her breathing, slow, heavy, right underneath me. I leaned over the edge and whispered, "Mom?" She didn't answer. Just this soft little giggle. Not mean, not playful, just weird. I called for her louder. After a few seconds, she crawled out from under the bed like it was the most normal thing in the world, smiled at me and said, "Go to sleep, sweetheart. Mommy's here." Then she left the room. The next night, same thing. I heard her crawl under right after lights out. The soft thud of her knees and hands against the floorboards. The shift of the mattress as she settled in. Then the breathing. I was too little to really question it. I thought maybe it was just a game she liked to play, but the older I got, the more I realized it wasn't a game. It became a routine. She'd tuck me in like normal, turn off the lights, and then she'd get under the bed. Every single night. And then she started doing little things. She would tap on the wood under my mattress in these odd rhythms. 3 taps, then 2, then 4. Sometimes it sounded almost like a song, other times like random patterns. If I moved or sat up, she'd stop until I lay back down. A couple times I caught her peeking out from the foot of the bed. I'd feel eyes on me and look down, and there she was. Her face just visible in the dark, one eye glinting in the faint light from the hall. No expression, just watching. I stopped sleeping well. I'd lie stiff under the covers, too afraid to move or call for her. If I tried to leave the bed, she'd grab my ankle. Not hard, just enough to stop me. Then she'd giggle again, that same soft, weird giggle. I never told anyone. How do you explain something like that when you're a kid? I figured no one would believe me. It wasn't every night that something scary happened. Some nights she'd just lie there quietly. I'd hear her whispering to herself sometimes. Words I couldn't make out, soft and steady like she was talking to someone I couldn't hear. This went on for years. During the day she was totally normal. Made my lunch, helped with homework, joked with me, hugged me. I remember trying to work up the courage to ask her about it once when I was around 10. I said something dumb like, "Mom, do you sleep under my bed?" She just blinked at me and smiled. "Oh, buddy, I don't do that. You must be having silly dreams." But that night she was there again, and the tapping was louder. By the time I was 9 or 10, I stopped looking under the bed. I started sleeping on the couch when I could get away with it. Eventually, when I turned 11, she told me I was old enough to have a lock on my door. She never came back into my room. I don't know why she did it. I don't know what changed. She passed away when I was 23. Cancer. In her last weeks, she was confused a lot of the time, drifting in and out, but one night, when I was sitting by her bed, she grabbed my wrist and said very clearly, "I kept you safe, you know. You were never alone at night." I still don't understand what she meant. Okay, so a little backstory here. My husband and I have this really crappy bed frame. It's basically 2 twin prison cots zip-tied together. We have this stupid thing because we got bed bugs about a year ago, which is its own horror story. The moral of which is, pay for an exterminator. Anyway, we had to throw away our nice bed, and because of the cost of everything, we ended up with these hollow metal cot bases. We have 2 dogs, Hester, named after our high school's football coach, and Molly, which was her name when we rescued her. It fit, so it stuck. Hester likes to sleep directly on top of you, whereas Molly is most likely to be found under the bed or in another room if possible. She kinda has 13-year-old girl energy. Sometimes she will lay in our bed before we get in bed, but as soon as we even bump her, she's done and back under she'll go. I think she likes her little cave. So last Wednesday was pretty normal. We all headed to bed and Molly hustled under the bed, despite me begging her to come cuddle me. After I gave up patting the bed and calling her name, I fell asleep around 10:30, reading a spooky story on here. Around 12 a.m. I woke up to Molly growling, which is unusual because she never growls and rarely barks. I asked her what was wrong, and once she heard my voice she calmed down and I didn't hear her growling anymore. Me being paranoid because of the story I'd just read made my husband go check the house, to which he lightly protested because Hess hadn't been barking or growling, which he does to everything including our poor mail lady. He nonetheless relented and checked the other rooms. No murderers in the building. Molly was just dreaming. Go back to sleep. I felt better, but it was weird and I wanted to make sure Molly was okay. So I leaned upside down under the bed to check on Molly. I saw what I thought was her fluffy tail wagging and said, "Are you okay, Molly girl?" I just saw her wag her tail, so I took that as a yes and popped back up and went to bed. But knowing what I know now, I don't think it was Molly. The next day, Thursday, was uneventful. The most exciting thing I did was attend a vendor lunch at work, but everything else at home was boring and normal. Dinner, TV, shower, bed. Same as the night before, we all headed to bed, only this time I fell right asleep because I was so tired from a bad night's sleep the night before. Then at 12 a.m. it happened again. Molly growled, only this time she barked too, which is actually what woke us all up. Even Hester started barking. I was so startled that I just yelled, "Dogs, cut it out!" Which stopped Molly, but now Hester was all riled up and jumped down to check on his sister. I followed his lead and I peeked under the bed again. This time I saw what the night before I thought was Molly's tail, except Molly was on the other side of the bed, wagging her tail so I could tell it wasn't her. I popped up and grabbed my phone for better light, but when I looked back, all I saw was a notebook, some dirty socks, every hair tie I've ever lost, and Molly just wagging her tail at me. When I told my husband, he jokingly said it's probably a ghost, and told me to go back to bed, but I was still freaked, mostly from how jarring it is to wake up from a dead sleep to 2 barking dogs. So I stayed up, and just tried to calm down. Molly decided that she would spend some time on top of the bed, which is kinda weird, but I knew as long as I didn't invade her personal space, she would stay, so I made some extra room. I was messing around on my phone when I heard the faintest rustling and what sounded like a door moving. I froze and I don't think I've ever been so scared. I could see Molly, I was touching Hester, and my husband was out cold. So nothing else should have been making noise. Certainly nothing should have been opening doors. It just sounded like the faintest noise of something scooting. I whispered, "Molly?" Then it just stopped. I still couldn't move, so I held my breath and just listened. Silence. Finally, around 2:30, I was able to calm down enough to sleep, and I fell into a restless sleep. The next day I didn't have to work because I only work every other Friday, which was great because I was exhausted. It was a pretty lazy day. I decided I wanted a little nap, so I let the dogs outside to play since it was so nice, and walked to our bedroom for a little snooze. At 12 p.m. this time, I heard Molly barking and growling under the bed again, which was impossible because I knew she was outside, and this time I felt it bump the bed. I immediately started crying because I was home alone, and all I could imagine was a literal monster under my bed. As soon as it heard me sobbing, it quieted down, and the sound stopped. I gathered enough courage to leap out of bed, as far from the bed as I could get, and sprinted outside. I called my husband at work and explained what happened. Well, he was compassionate. He's also about as pragmatic as one can be, so he told me I was probably just tired and heard the dogs from outside. I reluctantly agreed and decided to let the dogs in and nap on the couch. Friday nights for us is usually 2 bottles of wine and binge watching It's Always Sunny until we are good and tipsy enough to playfully debate stupid things. Last Friday was no exception. I think we argued about whether or not blackout curtains canceled noise or not, which turned into why our dogs would be barking at nothing the last couple of nights. I told my husband that I kinda believed we had a ghost, and he teased I was being dramatic. Due to the wine overconsumption, I was feeling a little sensitive, and I took it way more personally than I would have sober, so I pouted and said I didn't want to sleep with him, which really only proves him right about the drama. But I stood my drunk, sensitive ground, and fell asleep on the couch. About 20 minutes later, I'm woken up by barking and my husband yelling, "Molly, stop it! What's going on?" Only this time, I wasn't in there to prove it wasn't Molly, so I ran into our bedroom to check on everyone. Molly was still growling, so I lifted the bed skirt to call Molly out. But the next thing I hear is Molly's nails clicking in the hardwood behind me, and that's when I realized Molly had been under the coffee table when I bolted out of the living room. It hadn't fully registered until I saw her behind me, and not under the bed, but it was under the bed. At first I thought it was a dog, because of all the hair I saw. However, when it turned toward me I saw it looked more human, but it was growling exactly like Molly. I gasped and scrambled back, but it flinched and whimpered like I had heard it. Then it slowly scooted away and disappeared. After that, I told my husband to grab the dog's leashes. We were going to a hotel, or at the very least I was, since he saw Molly follow me into the room after thinking he heard her under the bed. He agreed at the very least something was weird. I had to pay the Uber driver $20 to let us bring the dogs despite noticing a substantial bit of cat hair. But I didn't care, I just wanted out. When we got to the hotel, I told the front desk agent, half joking, that we were running away from home, which she didn't find humorous and just dryly handed us the key. We clambered up to our hotel room. Luckily, we had enough points to pay for the night and didn't have to fight about how much the hotel was. And both of us, drunk and exhausted, passed out. We made it through the night without incident, except Molly was sleeping in the bed now. I guess she was rattled too. The next morning, after a nice hotel shower and bad hotel coffee, I told my husband we needed to dismantle the bed and figure out what was going on. I said if I was going to sleep in that room again, the bed frame either needed to be boarded up, or we had to just put the bed directly on the floor. I don't think my husband was completely sold at this point, but he did have to admit that Molly was acting weird at night, and last night did confuse him. So when we got home and started to pack our bed up, we settled on just laying it on the ground until we could afford a bed frame with drawers. Poor Molly, no more bed cave. As we went to pull the mattress off, the dog started to lose it and scrambled to get under the bed now that there was more room. Once I could see what they saw, I dropped my side of the mattress. Luckily, my husband wasn't looking under the bed and was able to catch it, exclaiming, "What the hell, Allie? You almost crushed the dogs." With tears welling in my eyes, I stared at the floor under our bed. There was a small, roughly cut slab of our floor, presumably leading to the crawl space. Once I finally stammered out, "I'm not crazy." My husband saw what I saw. "Molly, Hess, get away from there now," he said. "Come on, everyone out of the house." My husband ushered us all out to the front porch and immediately called 911. The cops came and spent a frustrating amount of time asking us if we were sure this isn't just your crawl space access, to which we kept explaining over and over again that it wasn't there when we moved in, and pointing out it didn't have a hinge. Saying that the crawl space was most likely to have a possum or raccoon. They called animal control and told us this wasn't really a police matter. I was so angry because I don't know of any raccoons who can effectively cut a square door in my floor, but I didn't really have any other choice. So Jerry, our friendly neighborhood exterminator slash relocator, arrived with his cages and possum catching stick thing. We explained to him we felt very confident it wasn't an animal, but since he was contacted by the police and they assured him we were being dramatic, he decided to go in. We waited and waited for him to come out, praying he had a possum in his stupid cage. But after about 20 minutes of complete silence, we started to worry. We yelled down the hole, "Hey Jerry, everything okay down there?" Silence. Shocking silence. Even the dogs seemed still, heads cocked like they were listening for something. Anything. With nowhere else to turn, we called the police again and explained what had happened. They just told us they would call his company and send someone else out. But like, what? A man fully went missing in our crawl space? So here comes Jerry's boss. We explain everything again and begged him not to go in the crawl space, to which he said, "I'm not. That's not really my job." He walked around the house to look for other exits to the crawl space, and when he found an opened hatch, told us. Jerry is our most tenured relocation expert, but he has a tendency to get a little antisocial. He probably didn't find anything, decided the job was done, and left. That didn't exactly feel like an answer to us, but this guy knows Jerry and we don't, so like, whatever, I guess. But also, what am I going to do? Make him go look for Jerry? So he just left. It wasn't until about an hour after he left that we realized Jerry's van was still parked on our street, so I felt pretty confident that Jerry didn't just leave the crawl space, unless he decided to hitchhike with his possum stick. But at this point it was like 9:30 p.m., and we were so tired and felt like we were out of options. And, unfortunately, hotel points. We decided to sleep in the guest room with the door locked and barricaded, per my theatric but frankly practical recommendation. The floor in this room is built directly on the slab, since it's a converted garage. We called for Jerry one more time but decided to put the mattress back on the floor. We figured if he was still under there, he could get out of the hatch, and I didn't want a stranger crawling into my house in the middle of the night. We decided that either Jerry must be a weirdo who actually just wandered off, or the ghost ate him. That's only partially a joke at this point. We made it through the next couple nights. No Jerry, but also no incidents. I guess his van just lives here now because I can't get a hold of anybody at his company. I don't really have any other option but to keep trying to call them. And wait, it's not like the police have helped at all. But now it's Monday night at 12 a.m. Molly is nuzzled under my neck, Hester is at my feet, and we cannot sleep because now we can hear them both growling under the bed.